Broncos go. Way to save the season to throw. Fire down! Incomplete down at the goal line by San Diego. Tomlinson off the left side. Tomlinson sidestep. Hello, history books. I think they have to now. Here's Sproles. Sproles inside the 10, inside the 5, and the Chargers win the game.
What's up, good people? Craig and myself here to do this record prediction. Of course, the Chargers schedule release got released last week, Thursday, if I'm not mistaken. And we got to see a new anime video and catch all those Easter eggs in those videos. And now we're here to, before the season even starts, talk about all these games, where Craig and I think the records are going to unfold, how they're going to do in the division and all that. Jamie is not with us today. He's celebrating a late Mother's Day with his wife, so he will not be here today, but it'll be Craig and I break this thing down. Craig, how you feeling, man? How you doing?
I'm good, man. Also, happy late Mother's Day to all the moms out there watching. If you're into Chargers football or not, if you just so happen to be sitting next to your significant other who's a nutcase like we are, then thanks for the support. Either way, all the husbands and dads greatly appreciate it. But I'm good, man. Just recovering from yesterday, as it was a pretty eventful day. So I've been behind all day, as I told you before. But making it happen.
Yeah, same. Okay, so what we're going to do here today is we're just going to break down wins and losses. We'll talk about what happened with each team kind of in the offseason, and then we'll each go down wins and losses, whether we think they're going to win, whether the Chargers will lose. And then at the end, we'll give our record prediction on how the Chargers will finish at the end of the year. So, Craig, let's get it going here. And the Chargers got a pretty tough matchup right out the gate. They are playing the Miami Dolphins week 1. So how you got this game going?
Yeah, so this is the one a lot of Chargers fans wanted to see right off the bat, and me included, because, of course, with all the back and forth banter about Herbert and Tua, the two fan bases have come to hate each other. And I'm not sure where this well, no, I do know where it came from, but this wasn't a thing before just these last couple of years, but particularly in the last year. So, yeah, man, let's just knock it out right off the bat. I got him winning week 1. Definitely I'm going to roll with Herbert over Tua. That's what this is about, right? Although there are other factors that are incorporated into the game. But my one question is, can the defense have a repeat performance of last year? We saw how well they played against the Dolphins and essentially shutting the entirety of that explosive offense down, with the exception of one play and then one freaky fluke play by Tyreek Hill. The Chargers pretty much had their way with the Dolphins offense. And by halftime, those numbers between Herbert and Tua were light years apart, and we were having a good old time. And especially for my pleasure in particular, when giving it to a host of a particular show on FS1, who shall remain nameless, but looks like a very famous actor if he had on a wig. But I got him winning it, and the new wide receiver corps, is going to have a challenge against the updated Dolphins DB group that now includes Jalen Ramsey. So that'll be a big test. And the Dolphins also have somehow managed to add more speed, because apparently they understood the task. Well, I'm not going to give the Chargers that hard of a time. They improved upon it this offseason, so I got to give them props there. But the Dolphins are all about speed, and they focus their offense on its entire offense is predicated upon speed, and they picked up Devon A-Chain from Texas A&M, so now they've got speed all over the place, like a world-class 4x1 track team. But I still think the Chargers find a way to pull it out. The game is at home, so I don't think it'll be a blowout by any means, but I do feel like they'll be able to come out with a win week 1.
Yeah, so I'm with you on this. They definitely got better this offseason. Adding Jalen Ramsey's good. Adding David Long to that that linebacker group's good too. He helps at the second level. And then, man, being able to have Devon Achane fall to when they're drafting, just huge for McDaniels and the Dolphins, and another weapon for Tua. So it seems like, if last year was any indication, the Dolphins might start off hot, kind of buying time till Tua gets injured, which seems to be the how that season rolls along for Miami. But, they get him week 1, so you got to assume Tua will be playing. And it just seems like, like you were mentioning, Staley and the Chargers kind of have Tua's number. The Dolphins couldn't really move the ball against the Chargers. That fluke play where Michael Davis falls down, that's just not happening again. So I think that I'm betting on the Chargers limiting Tua again. And Staley's had success against Tua with the Rams too. So it's not like it's just with the Chargers. So, if you got to bet, you're betting on the quarterbacks. I got Herbert over Tua every time. I think they win the home opener, and I got them winning week 1 too. So this is easy. So we agree here.
Love it.
So next up, week 2, they play the Tennessee Titans week 2. Titans didn't do a whole lot in free agency. They basically replaced the linebacker Azeez Al-Shaair with David Long, who they lost to free agency. So that was kind of a wash. They did add Andre Dillard to play left tackle, who is still trying to prove himself. Didn't really work out in Philly. And in the draft, they did pretty well. They got Skoronski. They got Will Levis, or Levi's, depending on how you want to pronounce it. They got Craig's boy, Tajay Spears, and then Josh Wiley is their tight end too. So was able to add some weapons through the draft. But this is a team that's in transition. Ryan Tannehill is quickly declining. Malik Willis apparently has not won the team over. And then they drafted Will Levis. So there's obviously going to be some QB movement, I'm sure, during the season, whether they move in Willis or if it's Levis. But you can't imagine Tannehill's finishing the season. They're moving on from Tannehill pretty soon. And there's been talks about cutting him and trading him, and they haven't found a trade partner. So we'll see how that all works out. But as of now, it just seems like this Titans team, just like I said, they're in transition. And the biggest hole in this roster is wide receiver. They've got Traylon Burks, hoping to build off a really nice 2022. But after that, it's just a bunch of dudes. It's Nick Westbrook, Elkine, Kyle Phillips, Chris Moore. They got a guy named Racy McMath, which I don't believe is a real person. Sounds like a character from the Cars movies. But, if you ask me, this is a team that could use a guy like A.J. Brown in their wide receiver room, but I guess that's just me. But I just don't think the Titans have the firepower to keep up with the Chargers, even on the road, because the Chargers are going to have to travel to Tennessee for this one. I've got them winning this one as well. 2-0 out the gate.
Yeah, so I will say this first and foremost. I can verify that Racy McMath is a real person because he went to LSU. So okay. I'm aware of him. I got to watch him for a few years. Talented guy, just hasn't quite panned out in NFL so far. But yeah, the Titans don't scare me, which sounds weird because you know what they're going to do. They're going to come out and run the ball. And my guess now, and this has been kind of the thing now for a few years, I'm just assuming the Chargers run defense is going to be markedly better. That's probably not a healthy thing to just assume, but look, it's what I'm going with right now. It has to get better. It's really hard for it to be any worse than it was last year. So hopefully I'm not regretting what I'm saying here, but Tannehill's probably still your starter week 2, but none of their quarterbacks really scare me. As you mentioned, the passing game is not what they're going to lean on. There's not a whole lot there. Traylon Burks was my guy a couple of years ago in the draft. But right now, that's kind of the only, in the passing game, yak/deep threat guy that they have. And if you don't have a quarterback who can consistently get the ball to him, and that's your primary threat in the passing game, then, not really worried about that too much. But if the Chargers can slow the run game down, they should be able to put some points up on Tennessee as well. So I don't foresee this being a really, really tough game. And again, regardless as to who the quarterback is, whatever their situation is in week 2, I don't see it being enough to give the Chargers any real competition. I mean, it's a game that's on the road. Again, if we were playing at least a decent QB, then maybe that would matter. I don't think the home field advantage is going to make that much of a difference because of the product on the field. It won't be enough to push them forward to a W. So I have the Chargers winning in week 2 as well.
All right. You and I have them 2-0 in the first 2 weeks. All right. So then they go back on the road and they play the Vikings in Minnesota for week 3. How you got this shaken out?
All right. So you're looking at a Minnesota game and you have to ask yourself a couple questions. Well, what are the advantages the Chargers have here? Well, I'm glad you asked. Mr. Ficken and Kendricks, former Vikings. So hopefully that intel comes in handy. Their offense could be very one-dimensional because it looks like Dalvin Cook's going to be cut. I know they have some pretty decent backup running backs, but none of those guys are Cook. So taking that into account, you're talking about Kirk Cousins having to sling the ball around to an upgraded passing game that now has Addison as well as Justin Jefferson. So you have to be on the lookout for that. But if you're talking about a potential shootout with the Vikings, I'm going to put my money on Herbert there because the pass rush is probably going to be able to get home on Cousins, and that is assuming we have our full complement of pass rushers there. But I do believe that, again, fingers crossed, that'll play out the way that it should. It's pretty early in the year, so I don't think we'll get to the point of having pushed the panic button that early when it comes to injuries. I sincerely hope so. But yeah, if you're talking about just a sling it around the yard between Herbo and Cousins, then I'm rolling with 10 all day long. Cousins doesn't scare me. He's a very good quarterback in a system where he has a bunch of weapons, and that's what he has on the offensive side of the ball with Minnesota. The defense was not very good last year. I don't see that being drastically better this year, so the Chargers should be able to take advantage of that. And I wouldn't be surprised to see a defensive touchdown in this game. Kirk's pretty good for some sort of wild, screwy, boneheaded play, particularly in close games. And I'm not saying that this is going to be a blowout. Like I said, if it turns into a tossing the ball around the yard game, there'll probably be a lot of points. But I'm going to lean on Kirk probably making the mistake that ultimately cost them the game. So I got the Chargers winning this one as well.
Yeah. So Vikings are one of those teams that seems like at times, I don't even know if they know that they're going in all in right now or if they feel like they've done enough, but it feels like they want to try to finish out this Kirk Cousins window before they got to move forward. They traded Zadarius Smith, but they signed Marcus Davenport to rush opposite Donnell Hunter. They picked up the former Cardinal Byron Murphy and former Patriot Joe Juwan Williams to their DB group. So trying to get better there. And of course, adding Jordan Addison next to Justin Jefferson should help. For me, the biggest question is Dalvin Cook. You mentioned it. They've been shopping Cook. I think if he's gone, this is an easy win for the Chargers. Right now, Dalvin Cook's on the roster. So I took into account that Dalvin Cook is still there, and presuming he plays, and the fact that for whatever reason, Kirk Cousins in the first 4, 5 to 6 games always starts out really hot. He falls apart late, but he plays so good at the beginning. They catch him during that hot streak. Our Chargers are also on the road in the Dome. This game could get flipped either way. If Dalvin Cook's not playing, I'm with Craig. I'm going to assume Dalvin Cook's playing, and I think this is one of those games that's just really close on the road, a tough one. I say they lose this one here. Even though the Chargers are better on paper, there's just some games that the Chargers lose that they should win. This feels like one of them. This is just a gut feeling. Chargers should win this 9 times out of 10, but this is one of those times. The 1 time out of 10 they lose, and I've got them losing in week 3 against the Minnesota Vikings on the road.
Yeah, the first quarter of the season, there's always that weird Kirk Cousins MVP talk. So, yeah, you're right. For some reason, the dude just comes out putting up crazy numbers. And, somewhere around the middle of the season, just past the halfway point, you're asking yourself how you ever made that mistake.
Right. Yeah, the Vikings are like 5-6-0 somehow. And they're and then at the end, they're 8-8 or whatever. 8-9 now. All right. So week 4, right before the bye week, they get the Raiders. It is at home. This is going to be obviously a different Raiders team. They got Jimmy G now, but in my mind, and we haven't really talked about it, but I just don't see that big of a leap from Derek Carr to Jimmy Garoppolo in my mind. For this team, the weak spot's always recently been the DB group. They added Duke Shelley and David Long Jr. They signed the safety Marcus Epps, but none of those guys really move the needle for me. Those are low-end free agent signings. They did add some nice pieces in the draft. They got Tyree Wilson, Michael Mayer, Jacorian Bennett, Chris Smith. Some nice picks there. Obviously, they were drafting high, so they had the ability to get some of the better players. But the Raiders still have their issues. It just seems like they've got two stars on either side of the ball. They've got Devontae Adams, they got Max Crosby, and they just need some help. And Chandler Jones was not that help. They're hoping Tyree Wilson will be that help, even though Crosby went apeshit against the Chargers. But that's last year. But regardless, they need help on either side of the ball. They don't have it. I think the Chargers win this one at home. And this feels like you're in week 4. You've got a new quarterback in Jimmy G. Even though he's been in Josh McDaniel's system, this is still a fairly new system because he had to cater it to the Raiders. This first 4 to 5 weeks of the NFL season is everybody kind of feeling out the process and kind of putting everything they put in the training camp onto paper on the field. And it feels to me like they caught the Raiders early. Jimmy G's still trying to click with the new system. I say the Chargers win this one while Jimmy G's still kind of out of sorts, and I've got them winning in week 4.
Okay, so this is where we differ a little bit. And as far as the rationale behind this just kind of feels like what you mentioned before. It's one of those games where you think the Chargers should win, but they don't. And I have 2 of those on the schedule this year. This is the first one. So I'll go ahead and say that off the bat, I have this as a loss for the Chargers. I don't really believe in it too heavily. It's just one of those things. They're 3-0, they're riding high, and then some way they lay an egg. But my justification for it is kind of along the same lines as yours, but a little bit opposite. I think Garoppolo and his familiarity with the system helps. And I also don't know if the Chargers have a real idea of what to expect at this point. Now, is he much better than Carr was? No. But as far as managing the game, he's pretty decent there. And I think they'll be very balanced. I think where the Chargers are going to run into an issue is what phase of the game are you going to be able to contain them in? Will you be able to stop the run? We don't know that yet. We shall see. Remains to be seen how much better the run defense is. And yeah, they do have some offensive weapons there. Got one of the top 3 wide receivers in the league. They did lose Darren Waller, so that's a big deal. But again, still pretty decent wide receiver core. And if they can keep the ball moving on the ground and be able to kind of incorporate some play action stuff in there, and who's going to take Adams out? Are you going to put someone? Is Vato going to mad Adams up one-on-one? Do you want to give that assignment to ASJ? That didn't go so great last year. And the Chargers seem to kind of just allow it as opposed to bracketing him or doubling him. So hopefully adjustments will be made this year. I just feel like this is one of those really weird games that you go in there feeling like there's no reason why they should lose. And somehow, some way, it ultimately happens. So again, I'm picking a loss here, but I mean, I wouldn't put any money on it.
Okay. So now we both got the same result here going to the bye week. Both have the Chargers 3-1 after 4 games. We won't make the easy Chargers lose on the bye week joke because that's low-hanging fruit here. So let's move on to week 6. Let's talk about the Cowboys. So week 6, they are at home. After the bye, they get the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, so this is more unleashing on McCarthy. I just feel like he's going to load it up. He's looking forward. This game's circled. You know it is. Kellen Moore's calendar. This is all he really cares about. Give me the week 6. All other games matter, of course, but this one's going to be a little bit different for him. And he's going to have a point to prove. So, again, this one will probably be personal. I can see the Chargers actually jumping out pretty early and then forcing Dak to play them back into it, which, of course, you want that. Absolutely. Because Dak is prone to make mistakes. And if you get him to throw the ball 35 plus times a game, the results are probably going to wind up in your favor. He's going to put you in a position to steal a game if they have a lead, whatever. However that works out. You definitely want the game on Dak's shoulder. There won't be any more Zeke. They do have Pollard. And, well, my guy Deuce Vaughn might get some snaps. So it's going to be a little bittersweet for me watching that game. But either way, as long as the Chargers win the turnover battle, I think it should be a W for them. The Cowboys have a pretty ferocious pass rush, and the secondary is better. It's Stephon Gilmore now at the other corner, so they're not a liability on the back end. Well, at least on the corners, the safeties are, whatever.
Yeah.
But as far as the front and your corners is going to be pretty tough. I'm really curious to see what Moore does with regard to balance. He really wants to throw the ball around. That was kind of the issue that he and McCarthy had. I'm wondering what the game plan is going into that game. Does he want to give McCarthy a bit of his own medicine where he runs the ball a little bit more than expected and sprinkles in the passing game with some play action? Or does he just go, I'm talking about lining up 4 and 5 wide and just lets Herbert rip it around the field? Hopefully you have your full complement of offensive linemen to help to neutralize a lot of that pass rush, because we know that they have that. And if the Chargers are fully manned up coming out of a bye with Kellen Moore, understanding the Cowboys defense and having that input on how their offense runs, because he ran it, he knows what McCarthy wants to do, then I feel like advantage Chargers just because of the extra intel that they have.
Yeah, this is definitely a Kellen Moore revenge game after the bye week. There's a lot cooking here in week 6. Yeah, you mentioned Zeke. I mean, that's kind of their biggest loss of the offseason, but quite honestly, I don't think it's all that big of a loss for that team. They needed to cut Pollard loose. They traded for Stephon Gilmore, like you mentioned. They also traded for Brandon Cooks. So, outside of that, they didn't really lose anybody outside of Zeke and Dalton Schultz. They drafted Mozzie Smith, who obviously was a guy the Chargers liked, coincidentally. They also got DeMarvion Overshown, who's the guy we talked about. Luke Schoonmaker, who was the guy we talked about on the draft shows. So they got some depth there. But I think losing Kellen Moore is going to hurt the Cowboys, and this is going to be where it really shows up, because they're just going to – I think it just feels like Kellen Moore is going to show out this game. And with McCarthy wanting to run it more, they're just not going to be able to do it this game. They're obviously one of the better teams in the NFL. The Cowboys are, especially in the NFC. They added some more receiving weapons. They got a little bit better defensively, and they're going to cut Tony Pollard loose. We'll see if he can take a full workload at running back, but coming off a bye with that extra motivation from Kellen Moore, which is every week you need that little bit of motivation. They don't got to wake up for this game. Moore's going to be ready. And so I've got the Chargers beating them at home on a Monday night, by the way. For the Chargers, I got them winning too. So we both got them at 4-1 at this point.
Yeah.
All right. So next up, it's week 7. They play the Chiefs, and this is still the best team in football as long as they've got Patrick Mahomes. They added Charles Omenihu, who was a guy that I liked during the free agency period, who right away instant upgrade over Frank Clark. 2 questions for me while looking at this Chiefs roster is a tackle and a DB. Adding Donovan Smith at left tackle is very questionable, who hasn't been very good there for a while. And then Juwan Taylor had a pretty good 2022, but he's been a liability for the Jags for a long time up until last season. So can he build off that, or did he have just one good season? We'll see if those 2 can hold up. And then the DB group, I mean, Trent McDuffie had some flashes last season. The rest of that cornerback group is just not hot. And then Justin Reed and Brian Cook are just kind of near the middle bottom safety duo in the league. So if you're looking for weak points, those are kind of the 2 spots for me. But even with that said, they're in Arrowhead here. I don't think the Chargers can do it. They come off a big Monday night win on a short week. I just don't see them winning here against the Chiefs. I got them losing in week 7.
Yeah, so from a person who attended the game at Arrowhead last year, let me tell you something. Some weird stuff happens in that stadium, particularly with the way that the refs call the game. I'm not a person who likes to blame referees, but man, there were some really questionable calls that turned around that game last year. One being one of those Asante Samuel dropped picks. There were just some really, really, really strange things that went on that cost the Chargers the game. I mean, of course, we know that the pick 6 to Everett, that had nothing to do with the Chiefs. That was completely on the Chargers. Mm-hmm. But outside of just shooting themselves in the foot, the calls just always seem to go the Chiefs' way. particularly if you jump out to a lead on them, and somehow it just kind of works its way back to a closer game, and then you have to deal with Pat Mahomes on top of the favorable calls that they get. The offense is still the offense. All they do is add more weapons. Rashee Rice doesn't scare me, but then you put him with Patrick Mahomes, and then suddenly he'll just be great somehow. So they went in the offseason, earlier in the offseason, and added more speed, someone who may not even see the field. What's the kid's name from Washington? Can't remember. The wide receiver who ran the second fastest 40 at the combine. John Ross. So they've got Ross there. He's had nothing of a career. Somehow they'll figure it out. And again, they'll have the fastest or one of the fastest offenses in the NFL again. And Mahomes will just play as Mahomes does. Travis Kelce's still there. Yeah, the tackle situation is a little iffy. And they did a really good job at finding a running game last year with a late round pick that contributed in big moments. And I think the offense is only going to continue to grow. And as long as you have Mahomes under center, you're probably going to be in a pretty good spot to have an advantage, especially at home. I have them losing this game also, mainly because it's at Arrowhead. But I mean, of course, it's against Patrick Mahomes, and some sort of magic happens at some point during the game, typically towards the end of it.
All right. So we agree there on week 7, losing at Arrowhead. So moving on to week 8, Chargers play at home for Sunday Night Football against the Chicago Bears.
The Bears are still a rebuilding team, and the Chargers should be able to win this game at home fairly easy if they can do something that they haven't proven they can do in a long time. So, yeah, I know I just flipped that completely on his head. But they have to stop a mobile quarterback. Justin Fields can run all over the place. Now, what he is in the passing game remains to be seen. There were some clips of him throwing the last week or so, and his form still looks really weird. But the kid has a pretty good arm. His accuracy is shoddy, but we know that if things break down in the passing game, then his legs are a weapon. And he was able to do that week in and week out last season, and teams couldn't quite figure it out. If you can jump out to a lead on them and force him to have to pass the ball and get them out of having to run it, they did give him additional weapons in the wide receiver room with a trade that they made for, I can't think of his first name, but Moore from Carolina. And they added some other pieces for him. So, yeah, great. I can also see them working a lot of short game and allowing guys like DJ Moore, to get their ball. Get their hands on the ball in the short area of the field and get some yak. They probably won't ask him to be pinpoint. It'll be a lot of play action stuff, a lot of smoke screen stuff, dump offs to the back, letting guys make yards happen on their own and create. But I do feel like if the Chargers can get out to a pretty decent lead and they have to depend on Fields to fight them back into the game, then the Chargers should win. But I have them winning this game either way. I don't think it's going to be that big of a contest. So this one is a W for me.
Yeah, same here. The Bears just aren't ready to compete yet. Trading for DJ Moore is nice. Signing Tremaine Edmonds in the offseason helps. But this roster is still about a year or two away from being able to compete with some more pieces. If this is at Soldier Field, I think it's a little bit closer, but Justin Fields is going to have to basically be a one-man show to keep up with Herbert. And I just don't think Chicago has the firepower. DJ Moore, Darnell Mooney, Chase Claypool, Cole Kmet. Those guys. DJ Moore is nice, but this isn't a group that should shred the Chargers defense. So I've got the Chargers winning this one at home. Yeah, it's under the lights. I got them winning this pretty easily against the Bears. So we agree there for week 8. So then they go back-to-back primetime games, and then they play at New York against the Jets. Of course, we know Aaron Rodgers is with the Jets now because he dragged that on as humanly possible. Made sure that we all knew about it every single day, went into a cave just so that he can get some more time on air. But here he is finally with the Jets. They picked up McCole Hardman and Alan Lazard to play next to Garrett Wilson. Robert Saleh almost got this Jets team into the playoffs with Zach Wilson and Mike White. So, and that's all really because of Saleh and his defense. They added Will McDonald in the draft, right behind Carl Lawson, Jermaine Johnson, and John Franklin Myers, which is a pretty deep edge group there. And the storyline surrounding Aaron Rodgers has been about a lot of stuff. His off the field stuff, the stuff in the cave, having meetings, burning Green Bay, whatever. But what I don't think we're focusing on is the on the field stuff and the fact that he looked absolutely cooked last year. He had his lowest QB rating to date. He had a 91.1 QB rating. He threw the second most interceptions in his career with 12 in 2022. I don't know why teams are fighting over this guy to play right now. He is on his way down. And honestly, the Jets should be better than they were last year with Rodgers, but is it going to be that much of a leap? They won 7 games. So what are they, an 8-9 win team? 10 as their ceiling in my mind. I don't know. The Chargers should play this one, even if they play it on the road. I think it's going to be somewhat close, but I think the Chargers can make it work. The Jets defense is definitely going to keep it close, but I think the Chargers can pull it off in New York on the road on, was this Monday night? Monday Night Football, yeah.
Monday night game. All right, so this game weirds me out a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Rodgers is still Aaron Rodgers, although he may not be what he once was. I mean, I don't know. But he went into the cave, slept in the hyperbaric chamber for a few days, came out, and maybe he's all locked and loaded and ready to go. But I'm just going to assume that he's going to approach the game with some more fervor now that he's in a place where he feels wanted and there's not all that additional stuff going on. The only issue is it's New York now, buddy. So that smaller market, you were getting away with being quirky. You lose a game in New York and you have to face that media. They're going to be unrelenting, and he could fall out of favor quickly. And then, who knows about mentally how strong he is to have to deal with that week in and week out, and whether or not that will affect his performance on the field. But
man,
he's going to have,
that's a really good point.
He's going to have a point to prove. And they're pretty loaded from skill on the skill side of things, whether we're talking wide receiver, running back, and also, when we're talking DB, Sauce Gardner, defensive rookie of the year last year, they've got some pieces. And like you mentioned, I'm also being pretty deep on the edges. My concern here is because they can be so explosive on the offensive side of the ball and they have a pretty stout defense, this game being on the road is what concerns me a little. Mm-hmm. If it was at SoFi, I may feel a little bit differently about it. But another name that I'll throw in here that I feel like could make a huge difference, and notice his name keeps popping up, is Eric Kendricks, because he played against Rodgers all those years in Green Bay, and Rodgers is going to come in. He has his offensive coordinator, and they're going to run the same offense virtually, and Kendricks is very familiar with that. This could be another one of those games where we're talking about one or two pretty big defensive plays for someone who knows him and that scheme very, very well. So this is a game that I'm picking the Chargers to lose, but it's another one where I don't feel super confident about it. I'm just looking at all of the different aspects of what could happen. But I also see a way for them to sneak a win out because of a big defensive play and Eric Kendricks being the guy to make it happen. So if they win this game, I won't be surprised, but just for the time being, I'm calling it an L.
Yeah, man. I totally understand. There's a lot of games that can kind of go back and forth and you don't feel confident going one way or the other, really. Maybe the Chiefs win an Arrowhead, maybe a little bit confident in the losses, but the other ones just feels like it can go back and forth. But that point about Rodgers not being and having to deal with New York media, man, I like with all the stuff in the last year or two. I mean, he got in trouble with the whole inoculation lingo, getting his COVID shot. His girlfriend, what was the name? That actress's name, whatever.
It's been a few. I don't remember the last one.
Shanae, anyway, he got in trouble with her, and he didn't want to answer questions about her. And now this cave thing just went on, and he wouldn't say anything about it. And he just kind of always gets himself in trouble and just wants to go, you know what? I don't want to talk about this anymore. And he's not going to be able to just shy away from it anymore. Not in New York. He could do that in Green Bay, but not in New York.
Yeah, good luck.
Yeah. All right. So I hear you there. All right. So let's talk about week 10. Chargers then go from Monday Night Football in a short week. They go back home and they play the Detroit Lions.
All right. So I know how most people feel about this game. It's the Lions. And yeah, if this was the Lions of 3 to 4 years ago, plus, I understand that. But these are different. These guys are actually pretty good, and they want to play bully ball. So they're going to come out and they're going to attempt to run the ball. Now, I mean, they did trade what's his face? See, I turned 40 and now my memory is going to crap. Swift. Yeah. Yep. Swift is out of town now. They replaced him in the draft with a back who isn't much of a downhill guy, but they'll probably use backs interchangeably and they'll definitely still try to pound the rock. You'll just get some lightning and thunder type cats carrying the rock. But the problem with that is if they can establish the run, which they will try to do, and it'll take an act of Congress to get them out of it, then you have to worry about Jameson Williams, who will be off of suspension by that point. And there's your downfield threat. Now you're talking about teams that, utilize speed to their best ability. Think about Jameson Williams. If you're playing the Lions and they have the running game going, you're going to get play action pass to death. And that type of speed, you can't risk taking false steps against, which again, knock, knock, Tommy, wake up. We definitely need to ensure that something happens at that free safety position, because you have to have somebody with the understanding of being able to read from the deep third to not get beat, because it's really simple when you have someone who can fly the way Jameson can. And the Lions game freaks me out a little bit, but I do still have the Chargers pulling it off. Number one, because it is at home. I think that does matter. I don't know about Detroit fans and how they travel. I'm not super familiar with that fan base, but I don't think Jared Goff doesn't scare me at all. But it's just like the pieces that surround him that are really, really scary. So you got Amon-Ra St. Brown also, who's going to be a big yak guy underneath in the intermediate side of things. And like I said before, you've got to be careful with the guy like Williams, because he can bust it from anywhere. 10, 20-yard line, taking it for 80. Like I said before, beating you in the play action game, running deep crossers. You got to be really, really disciplined in the back end of that defense. And the pass rush has to get home. But in particular, you've got to stop them from running the ball. That's going to be the catalyst for their offense. And with the new additions that the Chargers made through the draft, and also in undrafted rookie free agent, who you and I both are very fond of and hopefully makes the team. I'm just assuming, again, hoping upon hope, that the run defense is much better. And again, Eric Kendricks also plays a huge role in that. Maybe he has a big influence on Kenneth Murray. Who knows? But either way, if they can stop the run, and I'm hoping and I'm believing that they will be much better at that, I still have them finding a way to pull this off at home against the Lions.
Yeah, they were a team last year that were like a year or two away, and it seems like they're kind of making that push. But Dan Campbell always makes those games a dogfight. They don't win a lot of games. They didn't last year, but they make them really, really tough, and you have to earn your win. And so they went in, they signed CJ Gardner-Johnson. They got Cam Sutton to improve that DB group. You talked about drafting Jamari Gibbs. They went wild. They got Jack Campbell, Brian Branch. They got Sam Laporta to play tight end. So they got some weapons. And I was a little surprised they didn't add another wide receiver. Amon-Ra St. Brown is good. Jameson Williams obviously will give him a boost when he's back. Still don't know about him, though. He was injured almost all of last year. Now he's suspended. So we'll see there, but he's definitely got the juice. We know that. They added Marvin Jones, who, at this point isn't a lot, but surprised they didn't add another weapon there at wide receiver. But the biggest issue for me is they've got Jared Goff at quarterback, like you mentioned. I mean, everybody around them is impressive. I think they're building out a nice roster for a much better quarterback, hopefully, because that would be fun. I'd like to see Dan Campbell succeed. I'd like this Lions team to finally start winning some games. I don't think they're winning this one. I think you bet on the quarterback here, and Justin Herbert is just so much more better than Jared Goff. And even on a short week, I understand how some people might lean towards of kind of a tough matchup like the Detroit Lions, but I got them winning here too. I've got them winning week 10. And then very next week they travel and they got to go to Lambeau. This is a tough one at Green Bay. Here is a big unknown. Jordan Love, nobody knows anything about really. The Packers obviously believe in him, but just based on in-game play, he is a guess at best at this point. So it's hard to really gauge this, but just going off Jordan Love, this Green Bay roster won 8 games last year. They were pretty quiet in free agency. They lost their biggest asset, well, 2 biggest assets, in Aaron Rodgers and Alan Lazard. In the draft, they added 2 tight ends, which was just selfish, like we talked about on the live draft show. Luke Musgrave, Tucker Kraft. On defense, they made some moves, got Carl Brooks, Lucas Van Ness, Colby Wooden. So I feel like we're all used to the Packers being good, but I feel like just looking around at this team, I think this is where they start to skid a little bit. They may be able to make up some games here or there, make it competitive, but I just feel like at this point, we'll have enough tape on Jordan Love to know who he is, and I just think the Chargers become the better team. I don't think Jordan Love has enough weapons to make it too competitive. Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, they reached for your boy Jaden Reed in the 3rd, which I know you were surprised he went that early as wide receiver 3. But the rest is just a lot of rookies and UDFAs. This was the problem that Rodgers had. He didn't have enough talent at wide receiver. Still not enough talent at wide receiver. I don't even know if Christian Watson's a wide receiver 1 at this point. So I think at this point, just a gut feeling, the Green Bay starts to slide here in this part of the season. I think Jordan Love at his peak, I just don't think this roster has enough talent. I know they've got some speed, which will give the Chargers some fits. I'm not saying that they're going to blow them out, but I feel like the Chargers win this, and I've got the Chargers winning in Lambeau on the road. I went back and forth on this, but I'm taking the dub in Green Bay here.
So I did the same. This is another one of those back and forth games, and ultimately what it came down to me as is Lambeau in November. I don't know how that looks. And you're talking about an LA team going out there to play in what could potentially be inclement weather, possibly. Who knows at that point in time for sure. As a person who liked Jordan Love in the draft, same year as Herbert,
you were?
I will admit that.
Oh.
I'm not ashamed.
Okay.
And I don't want him to prove me wrong in this matchup. So if he plays really well this season, then I'm coming for everyone who gave me crap about it. But this particular game, I think Stanley was with me on that one. It might have been Stanley who was
really,
and also I think Stanley. If it wasn't you, dude, I'm sorry. It was somebody else in Discord. Can't think.
Jason
of might have been.
Yeah, Jason was a huge Jordan Love at 7 guy. He wanted Jordan Love there.
Yeah, you just saw like the Utah State. The off script plays, it looked Mahomes-ish. Everybody was in love with Mahomes at the time. He played with some trash talent around him, or lack of talent, should I say. And he made the most of it. The year before, the year he was drafted, he had a really good year. There were a bunch of coaching changes, so shot him a bunch of bell. Dude was talented. It looked like he was going to be able to be one of those draft steals. But, you're playing behind Rodgers, a guy who doesn't care to mentor anyone, really. And that situation in Green Bay is pretty weird. And I'm not all that certain that they're super confident in him, by the way. There was some comments that came out about, I guess they're trying to temper expectations. Like, you don't go from, and you're talking about a team who went from Favre, as much of an a-hole as he is, whatever, over to Rodgers. But you can't expect Jordan Love to walk in and just take over and pick up where Rodgers left off. So they're either tempering expectations or they haven't seen enough from him to feel super confident based on some of the commentary that's come out. But other than that, I think they're probably going to lean pretty heavily on the run. I mean, they do have Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon, so they can run the rock. That's not going to change. A pretty decent offensive line to do it behind. And yes, of course, they let Rodgers leave. And then they got him a tight end. I'm sorry, not him, but they got Love a tight end. And yes, a wide receiver that had no business going in the 3rd round, but someone I really, really liked. And these are just going to be security blankets. Other guys that they can get the ball to and let them go to work. Same idea. You've got wide receivers who can take short balls and turn them into 20, 30-yard gains. So they're probably going to do more ball control offense. Allow the receivers and tight ends to do their damage in the middle of the field and try to create for themselves. So again, this isn't one of those games that I'm really confident in one way or the other. So for me, it's a coin flip because it's in Lambeau and it's in November. I have this as an L for the Chargers.
Okay. And I do want to make a little correction. Being confident in Jordan Love, I just meant in the short term, as in this season, they wanted him to be the quarterback. They didn't go after anybody else to, help groom him or work him out of the rotation. So confident as in this year, they've got Jordan Love and they'll just see what they got in him. Really is what it feels like the plan is. All right. So week 12 here, Craig, Sunday Night Football. They're playing the Ravens at home. How you feeling?
So I have to watch Zay Flowers against the Chargers, and I'm not happy about that.
In prime time.
Yeah. Unfortunately, everyone is very familiar with the fact that this was my draft crush. Didn't quite work out. Win a pick later. That's over now. I'm coping. And it is what it is. Chargers don't like small receivers, so whatever. Again, I just need proof that this team can stop a physical run game that also deploys a generational athletic talent at QB. And now that same QB has a pretty explosive wide receiver unit that includes aforementioned Zay Flowers. And, well, what week is this? 12? Yeah, he may not even be available. But let's just say best case scenario, he is. OBJ is there. And you've also got a top 3 tight end. So this offense could look very different next year. And Lamar doesn't even have to be pinpoint accurate. He leans on his tight end pretty heavily. It's a bigger body guy that he can get the ball to, which kind of makes me question how successful he's going to be tossing the ball to Zay. We'll have to see how that works out. But when you've got a wide receiver unit that can make plays the way that these guys potentially could, along with a dominant runner at the QB position and decent running backs behind it, it's going to be a real test later in the season for this Chargers team. One who, will have had their bye in week 5, and we're talking a full 6 weeks later, having gone through some teams with some pretty decent run games. How worn down will they be at this point? Thankfully, this game's at home. Hopefully that plays a part into it. The fan base seems to be much more supportive. It's growing year over year, and maybe they can help push them over the finish line here. That being said, sounds like I talked them up just to say that I think they're still going to lose this game because I'm just not sure. This is one of those things, again, these are all just predictions, right? We don't know exactly what's going to happen. We don't know what the defense is going to look like. I'm just basing this off of the Chargers teams of the past. That running game combined with the explosiveness of the skill positions that they have on the outside and that tight end scare me. We're talking about another potential shootout. The Ravens defense isn't what it once was. They can cause a turnover here or there. They've got some guys that are going to play this year that didn't actually touch the field much last year that were potential top picks. I just said his name a little while ago, drafted from Michigan, tore his ACL during the draft process. Can't remember his name right now.
His name?
Yeah, I said his name. We were having a conversation. Maybe it was on a different show and it came up, but I can't remember his name now for the life of me. But he was a Michigan defensive end. Hurt himself.
Ajabo?
Ajabo, right.
Yeah.
So, and what they do, they just stack talent. Even this year, drafting an offensive lineman that hurt himself during the workout process during the combine. This is what they do. So you're going to have waves of defenders coming at you, guys that, are probably super fresh, that they can sub in and out and create havoc on the edge and on the interior as well. So the Chargers offense may have their work cut out for them, but the defense is really going to be stressed. And at this point, you're going to have some athletes, particularly at the second level, to help to contain Lamar as much as you can. You're not going to be able to stop him. With all of that said, like I said before, I think I have the Chargers taking an L in this game, but it's another toss-up because if the defense is playing to a higher level, particularly against the run, then I feel much better about them pulling off a win here. But until I see differently, I got to roll with the loss on this one.
Yeah. And just we didn't mention up top, but really when you're going through these predictions, there isn't a game the Chargers aren't in when they've got Justin Herbert. They can compete with anybody, whether it's the loss to KC, like we said, or it's a loss to whoever else we agreed on, which is going to be this one, the Ravens. If Justin Herbert's in it, it's going to be close, and they're always going to be in a game. There might be one of those fluke games where they get blown out for some reason they didn't come off the bus, right, or whatever. But with Justin Herbert, there's no excuses. You're always in a game. So I bury the lead a little bit, but yeah, I've got them losing this game too. Ravens got their guy. Lamar Jackson got his contract. He's happy, I'm sure. You mentioned Zay Flowers, OBJ. They got Rashawn Bateman still. They've got Devin Duvernay.
Yep.
Duvernay still there in that wide receiver group. When Lamar's healthy, they're one of the better teams in the AFC. And when he's not, they seem to fall apart. But right now, if you got both of them, this is kind of the game to me right now where you look at week 12. This is probably where the Ravens and the Chargers are probably fighting for a wild card spot. Bengals probably leading Ravens division, Chiefs leading the Chargers division at this point, and you've got two teams that are trying to fight for a playoff spot. So this makes a lot of sense for them to pick this as a primetime game. So I think this is a game the Chargers could absolutely win, but I think they end up losing. I just feel like the Lamar and Ravens offense are going to run away with this one. No pun intended here. But with the run game, with Jackson's legs and the speed of that offense they've got now, and then adding a couple more pieces to that defense, I think this is a pretty good Ravens team, and I think they win this game too. So now moving on to week 13, we're on the home stretch here. They're playing the Patriots at Foxborough. Now the Pats were 8-9 last season. They traded Jonnu Smith to the Falcons. They added Mike Gesicki in free agency. They lost Nelson Aguilar and Jacoby Myers, but then they added Juju Smith-Schuster in free agency. So it all was kind of a wash up until the draft. And then they got Christian Gonzalez, Keon White, and then a ton of guys they reached for, including your boy Butte, Craig. But, this to me in week 13, I talked about how it felt like the Packers are going to start to slide come week 11. Jordan Love's going to get enough attention. He's going to win enough games, but they're just not going to be a good enough. I mean, that roster's not very good in Green Bay. Defense is okay. I just feel the wide receiver group is bad. They're depending on two rookie tight ends. So I feel like that's where it's going to start going downhill. And then I feel like this is where the Pats are starting to lose it a little bit. This feels like nearing the end for Mac Jones at this point of the season. Fine rookie year. He was 6-8 last year before getting hurt. I just don't feel like Mac Jones is all that good. I don't feel like this roster is all that good. I know the Chargers have had their issues at Foxborough, but this is a completely different team. Brady is a distant memory at this point. I've got the Chargers winning this game in Foxborough, finally beating the Patriots on the road. I've got them winning in week 13.
Yeah, so I'm just going to start off by saying, so do I. And for me, it's really simple. It's because we have to beat New England. Yeah. I can't take this anymore. I'm over this. Like, damn it, stop it. The slide has to stop at some point. So let this be the year that it happens. And I don't care that I said a little while ago, Lambeau in November freaks me out. I don't care that this is in Gillette in December. Doesn't matter. I just feel like they're going to find a way to figure it out for my sanity. I don't think the team hates me that much. I feel like they're going to figure this out. And, J.C. Jackson already came out recently, says he plans to go in there, pick Mac Jones off. And I don't doubt it. I think J.C. is going to be back, hopefully to form. And he's got that game circled, looking to show the Pats what they lost out on. From a defensive standpoint, nothing about the Patriots scares me at all. I mean, particularly about the quarterback, who at that point may not even be the starter. Mm-hmm. We saw some issues last year with Mac holding down that spot. Was that Bailey? Is that Zappy?
Yeah, Zappy.
Was that the backup? Yep. So, and they've already shown you that they're quick to pull the trigger on a QB. I mean, since Brady, they have loyalty to almost no one. If you're not playing the type of ball that Belichick wants, then he'll pull you out of the game in a heartbeat to give someone else, maybe even a virtual unknown, an opportunity to run the offense. So I think the Chargers just have to basically play as close to mistake-free offensive football as humanly possible, and they should win that game pretty easily. It could actually get nasty in Gillette in a hurry. because Mac Jones, he's just not that guy. And there's an opportunity there to put him into some compromising situations. Bill's going to try to run the ball. Notice how the run defense keeps popping up, but it's just kind of the catalyst to make everything else work defensively. And if you can put the ball in Mac Jones's hands as often as possible, because Bill doesn't want to be one dimensional. He wants that balance. But I think he's scared crapless if he has to depend on Mac Jones to win him a game. And I think that should be the Chargers' game plan. Put everything you can into stopping the run game and making Mac Jones beat you. And it will be a lovely night in Gillette for Chargers fans. And I have them winning that game.
Yeah, this feels like this could be like Trace McSorley. They could be on like QB 3 and 4, guys you haven't even heard of at this point. Over Mac Jones for sure. But that JC revenge game, that's absolutely a good point. We talked about Kellen Moore revenge game, week 6, now week 13. There's some motivation. All right. So then week 14, they go at home and they play the Denver Broncos. The first time they face the Broncos up in week 14.
Yeah. So I really hate when they sandwich these games between divisional opponents so closely together, because you can get a read on a team from watching them from afar and film study and everything, but there's nothing like physically being on the field with them to just kind of see it live for yourself. But Staley actually has a very good understanding of Sean Payton's offense, mainly because he watched it firsthand. Maybe a lessened, watered down version of it, but he understood it. He also spent time at the Saints visiting, I think, before he was a coordinator. So it's the offense that he understands best. He ran it. He knows it, like I said, quite intimately. So I think he'll be very prepared defensively to go out and stop it. I don't know. None of us do what Russell Wilson is, or who Russell Wilson actually is outside of Seattle. Last year, was that an anomaly? I don't know. He wasn't in the best situation as far as a play caller went. And so, they kind of cleaned house there. I think Sean Payton's going to put him in better positions. Payton's going to be more balanced. They do have a lot of weapons on the offensive side of the ball. They even added to it in the draft with a wide receiver out of Oklahoma. And what's Marvin his name Mims. Again? Yeah, Mims. See, I don't know what's going on with me. I can't remember tonight. But yeah, so Mims is out there who's going to add another vertical threat into that offense, along with what they already had were throwing out there at the skill position. There's no more Melvin Gordon to fumble the ball away at the goal line. So, hey, they're addition by subtraction. And defensively, we know who the Broncos are. They've got studs on the opposite side of the ball. And, they can play some pretty hellacious man-to-man defense. They get after the quarterback okay. And passing the ball against them is never easy. That secondary is very sound and disciplined, and I don't see that changing. But with all of that said, this is a home game. And I know to a lot of people that doesn't matter, but I believe that it does. And I have the Chargers winning this one.
Good. Yeah, me too. So, yeah, obviously they added Sean Payton, which was a big addition for the Broncos. They tried to improve the offensive line. They signed Ben Powers at guard. They got Mike McGlinchey, but the big loss was losing Draymond Jones up front for that D-line, which is going to be a huge loss for them. They got Marvin Mims. They also got Drew Sanders a little later in the draft, but this team looks a lot like it did in 2022. So we talked about motivation for that Cowboys game, motivation for that Patriots game for J.C. Jackson. The Chargers as a whole have got to have some real motivation for the way they were clobbered in that season finale. They needed a win. They didn't get it. Mike Williams goes down. It was ugly all the way across. So this is as good of motivation as you need for week 14. I think the Chargers get fired up and they win this one. And I think they're going to win here in week 14. Chargers win, beat the Broncos in the first matchup against the Broncos. I see my camera's off, but let's just keep rolling. All right, next up, Thursday Night Football. And the last time they play the Raiders, we talked about them already, so we'll make it quick. I think the Chargers get the sweep of the Raiders. I don't think Jimmy G is as successful on the Raiders as he was in San Fran, because the Raiders just don't have the defense to survive all of Jimmy G's shortcomings like the 49ers could. I got the Chargers winning here. in my mind, they sweep the series here, win in week 15, beat the Raiders 2 games.
Yep. So we agree there. As far as the win in week 15, I have them beating the Raiders as well. I think they'll just have a much better understanding of who the Raiders are with Garoppolo at the helm. That's assuming he isn't hurt by that point, because Jimmy kind of has this thing about staying healthy, at which point you would almost assuredly assume the Chargers will win this game if he isn't under center, but I don't think it matters either way. I don't think there's going to be enough scoring there on the Raiders side of the ball to keep up with the Chargers, whose offense, again, best case scenario, everybody's out there and firing all cylinders, is going to be very difficult to stop. And they don't have the defense to match up with the various weapons that the Chargers have offensively, which feels amazing to actually say, because there's some quality depth at some areas that, particularly at the wide receiver position, weren't there previously. So I feel pretty confident in the Chargers pulling that one off.
All right. We agree there. So this is a tough 3-game sled here, having the Bills and Chiefs 2 of your last 3 games. So they started off here with the Buffalo Bills in week 16. How you got it?
So this is going to be the game that everyone expects the Chargers to lose, but they find a way to win. So this is the W that I have. You just look at the firepower on the offensive side of the ball for the Buffalo Bills, and you just assume that they're going to march into SoFi and pretty much have their way. You got another super athletic quarterback that they're going to have to deal with, but I don't think that matters all that much. I feel like this is going to be one of those tightly contested games that come down to, I'm going to call it right now, I think it's going to be a special teams play that wins this game. So you guys know how I feel about some of the moves that were made in the draft, and Mr. Ficken being the special teams maven that he is. I think whether it comes down to a blocked punt, a punt return, kickoff return, it'll be one play made via special teams that changes the course of this game. It may not even be a play that results in a touchdown because of the play, but I mean, the touchdown or points will come as a direct result of it. So if there's a block punt, it gets recovered, or if it's a kickoff return that gets returned in 2+ territory, that sets up a short field for an easy score. One way or another, the Chargers find a way to win this game. Might only be by 3 points, but it'll be a win nonetheless.
Okay. Bold prediction there. So this is back-to-back games where they're televised. This one's going to be on Peacock on a Saturday. And the Bills lost a few free agents in free agency, but the rest is pretty much the same, other than adding Taylor Rapp at safety. In the draft, they got Dalton Kincaid, they got the guard Osiris Torrance, they picked up the linebacker Dorian Williams, who I liked a lot, so pretty good haul there in those 3. And I still feel like this is one of the best teams in the NFL. This is a time in the season where I feel like they're going to be playing for playoff seeding, and even at home, I think the Bills are the better team. So I've got the Chargers losing this one in week 17 in prime time, if you want to call it Peacock prime time, on Saturday. I got them losing this game. So then the Chargers go to Mile High, and they play the Broncos week 17 on the road. And this is the other game where they should win, and they end up losing. This feels like the trap of all trap games. I feel like they have a tough one against Buffalo. They end up losing. Then they play the Chiefs, and they're kind of probably looking at that game there. And it is in Denver at Mile High, where they have a hard time winning as it is. This feels like just a mess of a game here. And I think the Chargers lose this one after feeling sluggish, losing to Buffalo, and then looking ahead to KC. I get them losing in Denver week 17.
Yep. So immediately following the game that everyone thinks they should lose, but they win, invert that. This is a game everybody expects them to win that they're going to lose, because it's at Mile High, and it's just that annual tradition, man. It sucks. I wish something could make it different. I don't know if it's the altitude or what. Hell, look, I don't like flying into Denver. I get bad weather almost every time. It's just something about Denver that doesn't agree with either the Chargers or Chargers fans. But whatever the case may be, I feel like they're going to show up. They'll be flat. Again, I don't have any rhyme or reason as to why it'll happen. It just will. I don't think it'll be a slaughter. It won't be like the, season finale last season, regular season finale last year, but I do feel like it'll be a game that's super difficult to watch. The offense probably won't ever just get things going. And you'll just be really annoyed all game long. They won't get into any real rhythm, and it's just going to be an ugly game to watch. So I have them taking an L in this one as well.
Oh, man. All right. So we agree there. All right. Let's wrap it up. We talked about the Chiefs already from week 7. We're into 2024 here now. For week 18 against the Chiefs, they play at home. How you got it, Craig?
Damn it. They're going to win. And again, for no other reason other than they have to. It's just got to happen. I don't want to end another regular season having my best friend, who is a Chiefs fan, laughing in my face again in a game where the Chargers seem like they have it in hand and then somehow, some way let it slip away. I feel like if you're Brandon Staley, you are taking these Chiefs games very personally, in particular this one. Now, let's say we're in a scenario where the Chargers don't have to play their starters. I don't expect him to do what he did last season. Hopefully he will have learned his lesson by that point, but he's going to really want to win this game one way or the other. And I have them losing the earlier game this year. I just feel like they figure out how to get a win this time around, because I don't think the Chiefs will be struggling at that point anyway. It'll probably be a meaningless game, fingers crossed. As far as seeding is concerned, this is me just assuming the Chiefs are going to be the Chiefs again. But I do think that the Chargers are going to take pride in this game, maybe more so than what the Chiefs care about it. And I don't care. I just want the win. It doesn't matter if it's the fourth string running back off the practice squad who just so happens to be playing in this game. I want him to rush for 200 plus, and just so I can shove it in somebody's face. It doesn't matter. I just want them to win the game. And again, there's really no logic behind this. I just feel like it's going to happen.
Yeah. So I've got the Chargers 11-3 going into that Bills week in week 16, and then losing 3 straight and finishing out here with losing to the Chiefs. This could be a situation where the Chiefs are resting starters, but I think it's probably going to be a close race in the AFC West at that point. And I think KC is going to have to play for something, whether it's just in the West or in the AFC. So I just feel like the Chiefs are the better team before they play football, probably better when they hit the field too in this game. Until the Chargers can prove otherwise, I just think the Chiefs get this season sweep and the Chargers lose the finale at home, which means we've got the Chargers finishing at 11-6.
Look at that.
Both of us, same thing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep, 6 for you. Yeah, 11-6. So, Craig, do you think they get a wild card with the 11-6 record here?
Yeah. The division as a whole in the AFC is just going to be crazy as far as the conference is concerned. You're looking at just the overall talent in the AFC in general. Rodgers coming over and what already existed at the quarterback position. This is the quarterback conference. So it's going to be a dogfight all the way through. It would be heaven if the Chargers could find their way into dethroning the Chiefs in the division. Will that happen? I don't feel super confident in that at all, but stranger things have happened, and everybody kind of has their run in the division. Well, the Chiefs and the Chargers do, and the Broncos, Raiders aren't really a part of this conversation, but it could be time. Maybe this is when the team starts to turn the corner. Again, they have depth in positions that they haven't in quite some time. So you're looking at a scenario where if they lose a guy here and there, it won't be the end of the world as it has in years past. You've got some quality players that can step in and maybe make up the difference when it comes to production. You've got some pretty decent offensive linemen to back up some guys for a few games if need be, to come in and play some meaningful snaps. And most importantly, you've surrounded Justin Herbert with a significant uptick in talent and, again, depth. And you're building your team around him. And the defense just has to not be horrible. If the offense improves, which I believe that they will, and the defense is just average, then this team has a shot. And they always play the Chiefs competitively. It pretty much always comes down to like a play here or there. And like I mentioned this during, the draft season, when we're doing our prospect rankings and everything, and even after the draft, you find a phase of the game that you can steal a play here or there from, and I'm talking about special teams, and I think that's going to be one of the stories of the Chargers season this year, then you're talking about something that can tip the scales a little bit. So yeah, long story less long, it'll probably be a wild card situation for them, but don't be shocked if they find a way to knock the Chiefs off somehow, and it'll be close, but it wouldn't totally surprise me this year.
No, me neither. No, and this is I was going to echo this too. We both got them at 11 wins. I think the upside here is 13. We both have them losing about 2 games, and that's usually what they do throughout the season. But right now, you could easily see at their peak a 13-win season for sure. And yeah, this is a wild card spot for me, and a pretty meaningful game come week 18, I think, for the Chiefs Chargers.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it. There are a couple games in there where it's just kind of a coin flip. You could see it going either way. Historically here, it's typically not going the Chargers' way, and that's why they've had some of the records that they've had. There have been a few games where, if it's a play here, a play there that goes their way, or they don't, again, have an unforced error and give the game away, then you're talking about a different record, different seeding, and maybe an opportunity to have advanced a little bit further into the playoffs. I mean, we'll gear over that 27-0 game. It is what it is, moving on, but there's enough on this team to be a real player, not only in the division, but in the conference. And I feel confident. I feel actually strangely more confident this year than I did last year. And I, had to temper myself a little bit last year, but I just thought Herbert was I thought he was going to tear the league up. But of course, injuries, not only to the wide receiver core, but himself affected that. This year, I'm hoping that the offense will be a little bit more balanced, but even if they do decide to just toss it around, now you've got a few guys that can make it happen on their own, and you don't have to, or Herbert doesn't have to shoulder the load.
Yeah. So, all right. So you said you weren't surprised if the Chargers win the Chiefs here in the division, and the Chargers are number 1. How do you see you got the Chargers here at 11-6. How do you have the AFC West shaking out? So, I don't need a record. Just give me like first, second, third, and fourth.
Oh yeah, it's easy. So Chiefs, Chargers. So Chiefs, Chargers, and those last 2, really weird. I trust Sean Payton more as a coach. So I'm going to give it Broncos and Raiders, rounding it out.
I got you. Same thing. I'm believing in Russell Wilson squeaking out or not Russell Wilson, Sean Payton getting Russell Wilson to squeak out a win or 2 more than he should. And I feel like McDaniels is going to create a mutiny throughout this entire season. So let's one question, because camera's still checked out since we covered week 15. But Craig, would the needle move if the team signed John Johnson III?
For me, yes.
Floyd.
Floyd, not as much as Johnson. Floyd doesn't really do it for me. I think he'd be a solid contributor in a rotation, which, I mean, is pass rush. So, yeah, it means a ton, especially in a passing league. John Johnson in the deep third, or hell, even Adrian Amos, 2 guys that have familiarity with the system, are both vets who have, proven production in the back end of a defense. So for me, it's more so John Johnson, because he helps to shore up, like I said, the deep third, and you want somebody that's smart, has that experience back there opposite Derwin. I like Alohi. JT Woods we don't know what JT Woods is. So right now, the free safety position freaks me out way more than an edge 3/4 would. Not having one, should I say, edge 4. We have an edge 3 now.
Yeah. JJ3 moves the needle much more than Floyd would, who'd be a 3/4 edge right now, with Thule being able to kind of rotate in and outside. But yeah, it would definitely move the needle. Now, would it change the win projection? I don't know that I would go that far. but especially when you're talking about a guy that's so far off the ball in a free safety. But he might sway that week 3 Vikings game for me, maybe. We'll see. Let's sign him first. Let's have the Chargers sign John.
Yeah.
But all right. So thanks for sticking with us and whatever's going on visually for me. But appreciate everybody joining us for this record prediction. Thank you, Craig, for joining us. I'm sure Jamie will be back next time. And look for Craig. He's going to be with us throughout the season here for these after game previews and everything else. So love you, Craig. Thanks for coming on and being part of more of the shows this coming season. And everybody else, we will see you next time.
Salute.